Um, I want to announce that our meeting next month for Environmental Concern Speaker Series will be Monday, the 14th of November. And the speaker will be Timothy Burrows, who has held many positions for the city of Berkeley, but is currently the head of Stop Waste, the Alameda County public agency reducing waste. And that should be very interesting. And tonight's meeting, I want to introduce Igor Tregub, which most of you have met or have heard of or have attended events that he has been involved with. He is an activist in Berkeley, having done many things. He's a former member of the Rent Board, a former president of the San Francisco Bay Area chapter of the Sierra Club, chair of the Housing Advisory Council, and long-time climate change activist. And his topic today will cover the current situation of solar power in California, as well as information about legislation in the state. And most of the presentation will not be that long, so most of the time will be taken up with a discussion, because he's very knowledgeable in legislation and other environmental issues, and certainly very knowledgeable about solar issues. So Igor was born in Ukraine, and he graduated from UC Berkeley with degrees in mechanical engineering and political science. And I will let him tell you the rest about what it is he's going to talk about. Igor.
Well, thank you so much, Carol, and thank you to the League of Women Voters, BAE, for giving me an opportunity to speak with you all. I see lots of familiar faces, as well as some folks that I have yet to meet, so I'm excited to do it here. Just to manage expectations, Carol is right. I did tell her I didn't have much material, but then 10 minutes ago, I found a new slide deck, which is a little bit more beefed up, or tofu'd up. And so I think it's going to be an interesting discussion. I'm definitely looking forward to hearing your questions at the end. The subject is, this is the disclosure part. For the last year and a half, I have been employed by the California Solar and Storage Association as a senior policy advisor. I left a career at the Department of Energy, specializing in nuclear safety, to do that. And this is all very ironic, given that I was born in Ukraine. And there is kind of a zeitgeist that has merged all of the different things I have been working on. Since February, I've pretty much been focused on 4 very related issues: saving solar in California, saving our planet, saving my homeland, and saving democracy, including energy democracy. And I'm going to talk about how all 4 of those things intersect. Today was a very dark day for the people of my homeland. For probably most of you have heard the news, although there's a lot going on. There were things going on in LA today, so the news is flying fast and furious. But there were basically what I would call terrorist attacks on the part of what would be a failed petrostate, were it not for the fact that it is a petrostate. See, Putin is receiving $258 billion a day just in oil profits alone. And that is how he is able to fund this illegal, immoral war on a democratic nation state of Ukraine. And this is why the more we in California can lead the way and show the rest of the country how to divest from fossil fuels and instead invest in a renewable, democratized energy supply, such as distributed solar and battery storage, the sooner we can restore democracy everywhere, truly. So I do have this new slide deck that you're going to be the guinea pigs for, because this is the first time I have used it for any organization. So I think I don't have to tell you, you've actually been on the front lines of fighting for California's 100% clean energy goals. By the way, I will not be seeing questions. Right now I have everyone's boxes reduced to just me speaking, but please don't hesitate to put your questions in chat or raise your hand, and I will get to questions as soon as I'm done with this presentation. So today, we stand at 33% renewable generation. And that's a far cry from where we need to be in just 13 short years, 2035, let alone 2045, when for SB 1020, which is the Clean Energy Jobs and Affordability Act of 2022, one of the priority bills that was signed into law, we need to be. And the growth of rooftop solar has actually been a California success. Just 16 years after Governor Schwarzenegger signed the Million Solar Roofs initiatives, actually, it took 14 years to surpass that and achieve 1 million solar roof installs. And that's just for single family, not counting solarized multi-family housing, including multifamily affordable housing. And here we are, just 3 years later. Earlier this summer, we surpassed the 1.5 million solar roof mark, including batteries. And we can get there. We can get to 3 million by 2030. However, this progress is under threat today, and I'm going to talk about why. Rooftop solar has contributed more than 50% of solar deployment in the last 5 years. The other 50% comes from utility scale solar, and we actually need both in order to achieve our clean energy goals. So we need to speed up, not slow down, rooftop solar if we have any hope of meeting them. And the projection that you see here actually assumes that we maintain our current status quo annual growth for both utility scale and distributed solar through 2044. This is not with the accelerator that SB 1020 has kicked in. So even more so, there is no room for slowdown right now in solar deployment. We have, I think, the most climate-friendly administration right now. We just signed the Inflation Reduction Act. We're not going to talk about the Manchin side deal on this Zoom. I definitely feel all sorts of ways about it. But this is still a time to celebrate the IRA, which also includes a new solar tax credit. And that solar tax credit increases credit for both distributed and utility scale solar to 30%. But make no mistake, those benefits will be all for naught if California's Public Utility Commission adopts the anti-solar changes that are being pushed by the 3 investor-owned utilities, PG&E, SoCal Edison, and San Diego Gas and Electric. And in fact, earlier, or actually now last month, 16 congressional delegates led by Representative Mike Thompson up here, Mike of the North, and Rep. Mike Levin, Mike of the South, have urged the CPUC not to use solar renewable energy storage policies in the IRA to justify cutting solar incentives in the upcoming Net Energy Metering 3 proposal. But this is not where it ends. If the utilities were to have its way through the CPUC decision that's bad, it would also jeopardize the very benefits of rooftop solar, of which there are many right now. So for the customers right now, if we had the IRA, which we do, but then there was a bad CPUC decision on net energy metering. By the way, what is net energy metering? Net energy metering is a mechanism that has been in place since at least 2006, when the Solar Roofs Initiatives was signed, which allows customers to benefit from the use of rooftop solar by receiving incentives to purchase rooftop solar panels. And then if they don't use all the energy that they produce, also being able to share it back through the grid with their neighbors. And if the utilities would not get in the way of stopping every single community solar legislation, save for the one that just passed, which I'm going to talk about, they would be able to share it with their neighbors for free or through a microgrid. But right now, they basically get a credit for using that. The CPUC proceeding right now has been in place for a year and a half. In December 2021, the CPUC issued a proposed decision that would have done three major things, which would have been disastrous, the combination of which would have been disastrous. One of the most reprehensible things, in my opinion, that it proposed is to put a solar tax on everyone that is trying to do the right thing, including working class and middle class folks, families, nonprofits, schools, small businesses, and farms. For residential, that would have been an additional tax of $57 a month just for having rooftop solar. And then on top of that, slashing the net energy metering incentive, that credit that if you have solar now, you can receive if you don't use all of the solar you generate and sell back to the grid that which you don't generate. The proposal was to slash that by 80%, which cumulatively would have taken the payback period for a simple solar panel on residential from 7 to 10 years to 18 to 20 years, basically doubling it. So imagine someone who has not made a lot of money their entire career. Maybe they were a K through 12 educator, or maybe they worked in a nonprofit their entire career. And now they are looking at retirement and they're trying to scrape together their hard-earned savings into rooftop solar, knowing that they're going to be on a fixed income for the next 20 years or more, and they want to make sure that there are reductions to their energy bill. Well, if it takes 20 years to pay off a solar system, who's going to do it? Who's going to be able to afford to do it except Elon Musk, who can afford to do it now? So by slashing the energy credits solar consumers receive by 76% over 24 years, that would be a $24,000 expenditure, which is over 3 times the value of the ITC. So what we need as Californians is to triple the growth of solar and realize the $4 billion in savings per year that an independently commissioned report has shown distributed generation gives to ratepayers, whether or not they actually have rooftop solar on their roof. Here's what the utilities want. They want to slash most of these solar credits, and they want to tax ourselves to smithereens to the tune of $500 for residential every year for the next however many years. So this just shows different projections. If it was a reasonable NEM3 decision, we would get a haircut still. And it's true. Even we saw this when the last change in net metering happened in 2016. There was a reduction in the amount of solar that was purchased. And we didn't actually recover from that until 2021. And we would see that haircut again. It shows up on the left-hand side, 2023. We're seeing that, but it would be a glide path in a way. We would be able to recover from it. But if the utilities got everything that they wanted in this proposed decision, which thankfully we have succeeded through our advocacy in getting the CPUC to slam the brakes on, what we would see is something more akin to what we're seeing on the right, where in 2035, there would still be less solar each year generated than in 2016. Here, what else is at stake? 28 gigawatts of distributed solar as soon as possible. Did you know that right now, all of those 1.5, actually the figures are from 1.3 million solar roofs, so it's even more now. That is enough to take 40,000 cars off the road for an entire year. That is also equivalent to permanently shutting down 40 large power plants. We need more of that, not less. That's what 12 gigawatts gives you. Imagine what 28 gigawatts of distributed solar can give you. That is taking fossil fuel plants, natural gas plants, permanently offline. And then let's talk about batteries. Our own goals require 48 gigawatts of energy storage to be realized as soon as possible. And if a third of that is distributed, we would need another 16 gigawatts of cumulative customer storage. So this is not the time to pull the plug on rooftop solar. A lot of hay has been made, rightfully so, about the California Air Resources Board draft scoping plan. Some of you may have heard of it. That is the climate action goals for California for the next 30 years. And environmental and environmental justice organizations have been going to Sacramento. I joined them on a bus just this June, and we were able to actually get some additional direction as a result of all of our advocacy to do something better, because even the plan that they proposed was inadequate. But under any scenario, including the problematic scenario that we have been calling to improve, it says right there, it's going to require quadrupling the current levels of both residential renewables and utility scale renewable generation. And then, of course, there's the Cal Matters article, which keep coming out about continued energy demand. And the New York Times, right there on the front lines, on the front page, says a fight over rooftop solar threatens California's climate goals. So we talked about residential, but let's talk about good jobs and small businesses. Right now, we represent over 65,000 Californians. That's more than the state's 5 largest utilities combined. And by the way, these solar jobs, those are some of the highest paying jobs and careers that someone can receive without having had to graduate high school. or received their GED. And I have lots of examples. We can talk after. There is a member of our board now by the name of Ken Wells. Ken Wells escaped the gang life in Compton. He actually served time. And then when he came out, he found that there were a lot of barriers to him being able to get constructively engaged in a pipeline to a career, not back to prison. And he took the bus every day for 2 years, training himself to be a solar installer. He now runs his own company, which is a multi-million-dollar small business, still in Compton, retaining local wealth in the community where he grew up, that's now employing folks just like him that are trying to escape the streets of Compton. And these very folks would be jeopardized if this CPUC decision came down. Now, if we do the opposite of that and provide sustained investment in local solar and storage, it would create 100,000 jobs by 2030 and an additional 374,000 jobs by 2050. And I don't have to tell you how this works. I'm actually sitting right now in Elk Grove, where it was only 91 degrees today, but the high last month was 116. During that heat wave, Californians were called again and again to conserve. And that means the solar and storage industry went to work for all the people in California to modify their charging and discharging patterns of their batteries. And in fact, you can see that the amount of energy that saved was exactly the amount of energy that needed to be saved for us not to reach the point where we would get blackouts and brownouts. And of course, there are these other societal benefits, like the sparing of wildlife habitats, corridors, and open spaces through the use of rooftop solar, instead of investing in the utilities vision for how everything should work, where it's just going to be a bunch of solar farms all over the state, which also, by the way, does not jibe with the 30 by 30 goals, both federally and within California, which is setting aside 30% of land towards conservation by 2030. And I referenced this grid modeling report. It's from Vibrant Clean Energy. It's the only one that has been done to date that it has not been commissioned by the investor-owned utility industry. And it shows that if we were to have a strong continued mix of rooftop solar in addition to utility scale solar, it will save California ratepayers $4 billion a year, which adds up to $120 billion in the next 30 years. On the other hand, the utility proposal, also known as the NEM 3 proposed decision, right now, if that is what is passed, it would cost each Californian ratepayer, whether they own solar or not, $295 a year. So we talked about how the conflicts in taxing solar with California's clean energy and equity goals. This is some modeling that I have been working on, and my report should be ready in the next month. Contrary to what some folks have said, which is just not true, it's blatantly false that solar is a plaything of the wealthy in white Bay Area communities. The top 15 rooftop solar counties in California for growth happen to coincide with the same areas that also are most impacted by the everyday impacts of pollution and oil drilling, according to Cow EnviroScreen, which is the way that the state tracks overall climate impacts. Many of them are in the Central Valley, as well as the Inland Empire. And also, this has been done by LBNL, the study where you see the box on the left, but I have done a different cut at that study using a different methodology, and it shows even greater numbers, that almost 50% of the solar that is being installed right now are in communities that are either moderate income communities or low income communities. Almost 50%. The people have spoken time and time again. 71% of Californians of all parties, this is a bipartisan issue, want more solar and think that consumers should actually get full credit, not less credit, for producing solar. And 80%, even more, 80% of voters strongly support net metering. And almost every single major newspaper has come out in support of more rooftop solar, not less, and making it more affordable, especially for working class and middle class folks, not less, and have come out against the CPUC decision to slash rooftop solar. And of course, it is really important in these conversations to center the voices of EJ communities. So we do so here. This truly is, and I agree with Esperanza Vielma, who runs a new coalition called the Coalition for Energy, Environment, and Economics. She runs it with a local pastor in Berkeley, Pastor Ambrose Carroll, or Reverend Ambrose Carroll. And she says it better than I ever could. This really is a debate between energy democracy and energy monopoly. Which vision do we want to realize? Or don't take it from SB and don't take it from me, take it from Barbara Lee. Barbara Lee always speaks for me. She wrote this back in February, making rooftop solar panels and batteries more, not less affordable for working families and lower income communities is the very definition of climate equity. We have rallied across the state to protect solar, and tomorrow it is not too late to sign up. We would love to see you. If you can take the day to come up to the Capitol, you're not going to be disappointed. Ozomatli is playing. There's going to be a performance by an indigenous dance troupe and everything in between. We're truly going to be centering all the beautiful voices of everyone in California united to make solar more affordable, not less, make sure that solar is something that is accessible to all, especially those that have been shut out of these kinds of decisions for way too long. And I will put the link in the chat. And for more information, you can certainly go to info@safecaliforniasolar.org, but I will also provide my email as well. And I will stop share so I can see your faces. And before I talk about Sierra Club priority legislation and how it fared, I would love to answer whatever questions y'all might have. And I will be putting links in the chat while I'm doing that. So let's see. We have a question from Natalie.
Hi. Do we have any idea how Newsom feels about the CPUC and what power does he have?
That is a great question. That is really the $1 million question. Or the $30 billion question. In the wake of, there's probably a more polite way of saying it than some kind of storm that 600 organizations have kicked up as a result of the December proposed decision. He has said that the CPUC decision needs more work. So what exactly does that mean? Well, the CPUC then went back to the drawing board, sort of. In May of 2022, they released basically a half step saying, okay, we heard that there may be some questions about the proposed decision. So here are all the different proposals that propose some version of the solar tax, but they're not calling it a solar tax. They're calling it things like a non-bypassable charge on self-generation or other things that are indiscernible to even sometimes me who works in this space, let alone someone who's just trying to juggle several jobs and pay their mortgage or pay the rent and pay their utility bills and gets these non-bypassable charges on their bills. And so it asked them to come back and say, well, what do you think about this non-bypassable charge? What if we did that? What if we did the other thing? What if we found death to rooftop solar by 1,000 different paper cuts and proceedings? So everyone dutifully went back and submitted more paper, and it basically everyone is pretty much dug into their respective positions right now. So it's really going to be up to the Public Utilities Commission. But here's the real politic of all of this. It really is up to the governor. And I believe the reason that we have not seen a new proposed decision since then is because the governor is trying to slow walk this until after the election, when he's hoping that this will no longer be on the news as much, and therefore it will be able to quietly slip through the cracks and be another giveaway to the investor-owned utility complex. Well, are we going to allow that to happen? I don't think so. We're going to be loud. We're going to be proud. We're going to be out on the streets as long as we need to in order to make sure that the voice of 80% plus of Californians means something more than money. And energy democracy means something more than continuing status quo and more energy monopoly. So stay tuned. As soon as there is a new proposed decision, you will definitely be hearing from us. But for now, there are continued ways to get involved with this fight. And I will put another link in the chat. That's the Solar Rights Alliance. It has all the different ways that you can be involved. One of the easiest ways to do this is to write or call the governor. I will put his phone number in the chat shortly. There were a few days over the past year and a half that we've actually shut down his phone lines. He was getting that many calls about making solar more affordable, not less. Carol.
Thank you.
Carol?
You're
Unmute.
Oh, you're
Unmute.
muted.
Sorry. I understand that there's a new head of PG&E who's a woman. Has that made any difference? Is she good? What,
Yeah.
how does it affect all this?
Well, I think in general, having more people that don't look like me is good, but I'm just the fact of the matter is this is the same new CEO that just received a $51 million in bonus this past year. And meanwhile, all of us, whether we have rooftop solar or not, are paying by the way, whether we rent or not, and I have not even talked about the benefits to renters, whether they have solar or not, to have more rooftop solar. As a multifamily renter, I feel really strongly about that. All of us have paid $9 billion in fire mitigation, or 60% of it, basically, to PG&E to clean up messes of their own making, which they're calling the fire mitigation fee. Another $4 billion that's called avoided costs, basically the costs that PG&E is trying to avoid. $51 million in bonus, and they're still going after rooftop solar. So that should tell you something. I think she has the opportunity to be a good CEO. I think that starts with withdrawing their proposal that will tax rooftop solar and battery storage. Michael?
Yeah, has there been any discussion about whether the Public Utilities Commission is going to recognize the California Public Trust Doctrine in any of this?
Can you tell us more about the, I've heard a little bit about the Public Trust Doctrine, but I'm not sure if everyone here has. So can you say a little more about that?
Well, basically, it's the part of our constitutional law tradition that says some things are not for sale, and well, for example, California Water is held in trust for all the people of California, including future generations, and I think the same is true for basic public services, which the Public Utilities Commission supervises, and that there's a legal obligation that the Public Utilities Commission has to assure the least cost and the most efficient provision of public services. And if they recognize that the public trust doctrine has always held and been part of California law, this wouldn't really be that difficult. And I was just wondering if you and your colleagues had explored that area at all.
No, that's a really good point. It's certainly something that I've heard others make that comment. There was one day when we literally made 8 hours of comments. The meeting started at 10 a.m. at one public comment a minute, which is all that they gave us. It took 8.5 hours for them to hear all of our comments. And some of them, I did hear the public trust doctrine be used. The CPUC, well, I mean, I have many colleagues that work for the CPUC. This is not at all impugning. I was a public sector employee myself for 12 years. This is not about ascribing motives to the hardworking women and men of that agency, but it is an organizational behavior feature, which I have been learning about in my undergraduate and graduate education, and I'm seeing right in front of my face right now. This is an organization, an agency that is supposed to regulate the top 3 investor-owned utilities. Yet in doing so, it has gotten captured by them. And it starts at the top and flows down to the bottom. So unfortunately, I have like some of that whole premise of a cost shift, a false premise that basically I, as a renter without solar, am subsidizing someone who is a retired teacher living on a fixed income elsewhere in Berkeley for having solar on her roof. You know where that premise came from? It was actually an ALEC document. And here I mean ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, which represents Chevron and other corporate businesses that are often up to no good. And they were trying to figure out a way back in 2014, because the other PR things they were trying to throw at rooftop solar were not working. So they were like, what strategy can we use to go after rooftop solar, not just in California, but in all 50 states? And we see with the cost shift now, that playbook that they're using in California is remarkably the same or similar as the ones they're going for in other states. By the way, only California, if they impose a solar tax, would only be the third state to do so. We would be joining Alabama. I don't want to join Alabama.
Yeah,
but now you're hearing this stuff from folks high up in the CPUC, and that is an indication of, unfortunately, how captured this agency has become. And it is up to us as we the people to remind them that they actually work for us, not the utilities.
well, that's essentially the premise of the public trust doctrine. And if you sort of use those words, you know, in 1869, the Illinois legislature granted the entire Chicago waterfront to the Illinois Central Railroad. And when the public found out about that, they voted out the legislature, and the new legislature came in and said, give us the deed back. And the railroad said, well, if you want your deed back, you're going to have to buy it because we have a legal deed. And after 25 years in the courts, the US Supreme Court said in 1892 that that was void, that the legislature didn't have the authority because of the public trust doctrine to give that away to the Illinois Central Railroad. And that's been regulatory law since 1892 and Supreme Court precedent. And don't you think it might be time to to remember that? Because it should work for the Public Utilities Commission.
Well, I certainly agree, sir. We've tried to remind the CPUC commissioners that if they don't heed some of these other cautionary tales, it would be kind of dangerous to their careers. In Nevada, the same type of solar tax was devised and actually passed, and it ruined the industry. Over that 1 year, tens of thousands of jobs disappeared overnight, good jobs in rooftop solar and battery storage. And what happened next was the public was so upset, they were going after the governor's head. And so the governor needed a fall person. So he sacked the PUC. The legislature was actually had to write legislation to overturn what the PUC did. The same thing happened in Arizona. They just repealed a much more modest tax than what is being proposed in California. And Arizona is hardly the bastion of progressive climate. I don't have to tell you that. But no, I think we need to continue to remind them of that.
Yeah.
Other question?
I'll say something here, continuing what Igor just said. The University of California Haas Business School has an energy institute, and the Energy Institute is in favor of the CPUC rules and the solar taxes. Well, if you look at the Energy Institute, who funds it? It's on their website. It's the utilities, and so money speaks loudly, and if there's a public interest, well, money can simply override that. I might say also, I've written a few notes on all of this stuff, and I can email them to anybody who's interested. And my email address is Eric Aarons. That's my name there, all together, without a space in between Eric and Aaron's. And then at Comcast.net, Eric Aaron's at Comcast.net. Mike is going to send you some stuff that I have written about this in order to make sense out of it to me and to others also, I hope. Anyway, thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Eric, for that. And I put in the chat the links to who funds the Haas Institute, as well as who funds the modeling behind the investor-owned utility version of the modeling, which is what got them to justify an 80% slashing in the net energy metering credit, which is in the proposed decision. Shauna and Mark.
Thanks, Igor. This is kind of a follow-up to the question about Governor Newsom, but in light of the rally in Sacramento tomorrow, and given that that both houses of the California legislature recently voted to extend the decommissioning of Diablo Canyon for another 10 years, I'm wondering if you have a gut feeling for how we're doing in the legislature now, or after the election next month.
Yeah, that's it's a complicated question. This is a good reminder for me to actually don't know if I'll have time, so I will put the link to the top Sierra Club priority bills and their disposition. That's in the chat. But this has been a tough, this has not been the greatest legislature, and historically, we have not had great legislatures when it comes to combating climate change. We have had terrible legislatures when it comes to fighting for the little guy and gal and trying to save rooftop solar. And all you have to do is look at who funds these legislators' coffers, and PG&E shows up a lot. The other investor-owned utilities show up a lot. We had, I think we got about 15 state legislators that did sign a letter, maybe 18 actually. I think we got to 18 that signed a letter to the PUC and the governor in support of all the asks we have, making solar more affordable, not less. But there were unfortunately just as many legislators on the other side of that, completely, they bought, literally, no pun intended, they bought the PG&E line hook and sinker. It is a new next year is going to be a new legislature, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens. This has been a tough year for us. We managed to pass the one good solar bill we were working on, SB 379, which is a local mandate, a funded local mandate requiring local jurisdictions, cities and counties of a certain size to make automated permitting for rooftop solar something that they're required to do. And we were able to stop 3 anti-solar bills, one by the skin of its teeth. Literally, it needed 21 votes to advance in the Senate, and we stopped it at 20 votes. And like a zombie, it kept coming back. And each time it was getting slightly fewer votes. It's going from 15 to 16, then back up, back down. And finally, the floor manager said, that's enough. This bill is not going to fly. That started out, by the way, it's a good microgrid bill, a bill to allow for more microgrids. But then the utility complex put in some poison pill language saying, basically, the only way you can put in new microgrids is if you are yourself an investor-owned utility. So then we had to stop it. And we did, but it was very hard fought. I had a bill, which as a multifamily renter, offended my sentiments. It was a bill that basically gave I mean, it was a sham bill. It competed with the very successful solar on multifamily affordable housing program, or it would have introduced another wasteful program, which under the guise of giving more solar to multifamily tenants would basically just compete with existing programs that do work, and was a giveaway to PG&E. And it took up until the second house, we were able to finally stop it in the appropriations committee. But it was introduced in February. I was having meetings almost daily with legislators and their staffs saying, this is not a good bill. We had a coalition of almost 50 housing and environmental organizations saying, this is an awful bill. Don't move it forward. And it still advanced that far. So I am holding out hope that next year's legislature will be a little bit less captured and more supportive of what we the people want, but it remains to be seen. I also see a question from Kathy that she chatted to me. Why don't we see more rooftop solar on big box buildings and all the Amazon, Walmart, and warehouses that are sprouting up on open land? I've heard that there are fire codes against rooftop solar. There are definitely, like, we have had a collegial relationship with fire departments, but it takes a lot of effort to get to a place where we achieve consensus on that. So permitting is definitely a thing. The cost of permitting actually costs tens of billions of dollars a year. This has been quantified. We are seeing a little bit more rooftop solar, like first with big box buildings. If you mean big box being multifamily apartment buildings, there is a new code 24. This is California's, or Title 24. It's our statewide clean energy code. Right now, there's a solar mandate for 3 stories or below. Next year, it's a solar mandate for everything. So every new construction will be required to put solar on the roof. Now, there is a equity provision, though, that says it has to be balanced against costs. And if the CPUC makes it impossible to do solar on commercial, which multifamily residential is classified for solar installation purposes as commercial, then it's not going to happen. So it is really the tale of 2 agencies. We have the California Energy Commission that is saying, do more solar is good. Go and do more solar. And then right across the street, the CPUC, which is saying the opposite. And it's been a very strange relationship that we have to go between, but we will continue the fight. I think we have a question from Carol, maybe?
Yes,
Oh, is that a hand? Yeah.
yes, I have another question. This is, it's sort of, it's not my personal question, but it was brought to my attention that solar right now is about 2.5% of total California energy. Is that accurate? And that there are plenty of transmissions lines for it, but there's not enough customers for it because there aren't enough batteries still. So what's the story about all of that?
I haven't looked at the latest numbers recently, but it's got to be more than 2.5%. That seems awfully low, especially when solar and wind account for a majority of our renewable energy. Now, again, 12 gigawatts of solar have been put on rooftops, and you can pretty much extrapolate from there. What was the second part of the question? Why do we not have more batteries?
Well, it's very expensive to have batteries. And right now, there's a lot that it's proposed. The thing I'm reading says that a lot of the solar that's produced is wasted because it's not being used and there isn't storage for it. So therefore, people are being paid to produce it, and it just is not being used because it can't be.
Yeah. So we see
So
solar.
The case.
Yeah, we as an organization see solar as the gateway drug, if you will, to all other good things that we support, whether it's batteries, storage, or electrification, induction heating, etc. The solution to making batteries less expensive is not to make solar more expensive. That's
Right.
the exact opposite of what we should be doing. And so we do get these arguments that feel very tortured to me. They're saying basically, oh, I love solar with batteries. We should be incentivizing that. Well, the proposal right now on the table by organizations whose spokespeople say that actually proposes a solar tax on solar with or without batteries, and you need a solar panel in order to charge your battery. So I agree with you, but the cost of batteries have come down some. They need to come down a whole lot more. And the way to some of these things we're not going to be able to control because they include supply chain issues, but others absolutely we can control through policy decisions, including the quote unquote mother of all decisions, which is the net energy metering 3 decision coming up. We have a hand. Oh, Therese and then Michael.
Hello, Igor. We met a long time ago.
Hi.
Through a friend, my friend in Albany. This is before pandemic.
I remember.
Oh, you do remember? Oh my gosh. Okay. What about renewable energy in the city of Berkeley, where this is being used in most of the new building construction?
Absolutely. Well, to my earlier point, the state is already mandating that all new construction include renewable energy. If the question is about opting up, we are part of a community choice aggregator known as the East Bay Community Energy, and earlier this year, the Berkeley City Council passed a resolution supporting opting up all accounts, including residential accounts. So we do get our energy, at least ostensibly. I say ostensibly because it's a little bit more technical, and I can't guarantee, even though it says it's 100% renewable, that it's actually 100% renewable. But it is a high amount of renewable energy that we do get. I think Berkeley can continue to lead the way. For one, Berkeley is actually trailing some of our neighbors, including the city of Dublin, which was one of the first to adopt Solar App, which is a free National Renewable Energy Lab developed tool to do automated rooftop solar permitting, as well as cities of El Cerrito and Alameda and Oakland that are rapidly working towards it now. But now there's been a mandate that cities and counties have to do it by next year. And then we can do more just re-envisioning the whole system. Just the other month, SunPower, Sonova, one of our member companies, used a kind of a little known, little used part of the CPUC code to apply to be its own micro utility. But what they're really applying for is to be a microgrid. Now the CPUC has stopped, the utilities have really stopped and asked the CPUC to put the kibosh on other efforts to do microgrids. Berkeley actually attempted a microgrid some years ago, and PG&E put the kibosh on that. But they're trying again, and we will see what happens with that. And there is a proceeding called a high distributed energy resources proceeding that is happening at the CPUC right now that hopefully will allow us to reimagine what community power, community energy can look like. And finally, there is one bill that did pass the legislature around community solar. We're going to be, as an organization, very involved in making sure that it is a community solar program that's viable, that works, that doesn't compete with net energy metering, but is a program for those like me that right now don't have solar on my roof, for folks to be able to have access to such solar, and is actually all the means of production are owned by we the people, not the utilities.
Oh,
Well,
Michael, and
Yeah.
then Kathy.
yeah, I was just thinking the elephant in the living room is basically that fossil fuels left in the ground are more valuable to humanity than oil extracted for any reason. And I was just wondering if the community energy sort of movement is thinking at all about asking the fossil fuel industry to use accurate economics.
Yeah, well, that is the name of the game, accurate economics, right? The utility funded studies that have purported that distributed generation is a societal cost rather than a societal benefit, it dramatically undercounts the costs of transmission lines, all of those new transmission lines that have to be put in and then maintained. In fact, it doesn't account for them at all. And then it overcounts the benefit of transmitting long energy over these long lead transmission lines. It also does not count at all the societal benefits of distributed solar. Same thing with fossil fuels. I think if there was accurate and honest accounting, just like the coal industry, I think oil and gas would be relegated to junk bond status. But unfortunately, because it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry, that's not going to happen anytime soon. But we're continuing to chip away at that. And one
Well, why does that have to be accepted? I mean, it's for the first time in history. I mean, this is a really dumb time to have a war in the planet's breadbasket, when there's so many people starving. And why are our policy leaders saying that we should be getting ready for this extended war when it's so stupid? And most of the people's, well, if they voted at all, they would vote no.
I agree. We like I said at the outset, because of the stranglehold that the fossil fuel industry has on all of our leadership. When I was applying to this job, I got asked a series of questions, and one of them was, what is my clean energy vision? So I talked about a Green New Deal, in which I truly believe in my heart of hearts. And then the next question was, what is going to get in the way of that vision? And I talked about the pernicious influence of money in politics. And that was just talk. Like it's how I was looking at the legislature from the outside looking in. Now that I have been dealing with this for 2 legislative cycles, I still want to take a long shower just to cleanse myself of all of the things that I saw in my short time there. It's really deplorable how much of a stranglehold this truly is. And we don't even have to look to Putin with his $258 billion a day in oil profits. We see this with the ridiculous amount of money that the utilities get and that the oil and gas complex gets. And then that's money that they shell into, they're bypassing every single precept of campaign finance and putting it into independent expenditures, including
Okay, so why
about
don't we
5 that dropped in Alameda
why don't we
County
just
alone
get it
in the
cleaned up
last few days.
and ask for transparency? I mean,
I agree with the, yeah,
well,
I think if
I think we got to do it.
we got to do it. If every one of us, and I know many of you have been doing this time and time again, but if we continue to every day ask the governor, ask the legislature, ask the public agencies whose leadership the governor appoints and which are supposed to work for us, not the other way around. If we continue to demand that transparency, you know, some of the worst things happen in the dead of night and on Friday evening. Some of these pernicious decisions, that's when they come out. So we have to just not allow that to happen. That's why we're going to be in Sacramento tomorrow, showing how important this is to we the people, that in the middle of a workday, thousands of folks are going to be rallying with us. But even if you can't make it to Sacramento, I put information in the chat, other things you can do, call the governor, go to solidrights.org, take some of these other actions and keep making it clear to our leadership that we're watching them.
Igor, this might be a good time to pivot over to what you were going to say about the Sierra Club. And then, you know, after that, there could be time for a few more questions.
Sure. Did I first wanted to check, was there another question
Okay.
from Kathy?
Kathy, yeah.
I don't know if this really segues into what we're talking about here tonight, but it's top of my mind because I just got back from a week in the Northeast in Vermont, which is where I was born and raised.
Oh.
And I was really stunned by the amount of little solar grids that I saw. I drove from southern Vermont to northern Vermont to northeastern Vermont and back to southern Vermont again. And everywhere I went, there were these racks of 10, 12 big solar grids. Sometimes there'd be 1 rack, sometimes there'd be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a dozen, but they were just everywhere, like in people's backyards. I stopped at a hotel and they had solar grids in the backyard. And I'm wondering, are those considered like microgrids, or why can a small state like Vermont get this kind of production in California? I was like, well, we're California, we have sun. I mean, they don't even get sunshine there, and people are investing in solar. And here we are in California and there's sunshine everywhere and all this opportunity and nothing's happening. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, or maybe it's just a comment I would make. As to why a little tiny state with no sun is investing in solar, but California is, and how they did it and how we can't. That's it.
Yeah, well, you bring up several important points. One, not all solar panels are created equal. If it's a rack of 10 to 12 solar modules, it's still, I think, what would be what I would refer to as distributed solar, which is what we represent, like literally our trade association represents at this point 720 members, most of them very small businesses, work on cooperatives, some union, some women owned, some BIPOC owned, some veteran owned, but there are different applications. Applications for farms are really important. But by the way, farms are the ones that lose out the most in the CPUC decision that's being proposed, because they have multiple meters, because they have to have multiple meters because farms are bigger than your normal sized residence. But if you're seeing something that does not look like a solar farm, just a few modules on a farm that's distributed generation. California is leading the way in solar, and that the message is, if we get this wrong, if the utilities get their way here, have no doubt they're going to use that same playbook in every other state in the union. That's why it's so important to get it right here. That's why Bernie sent out a tweet railing against PG&E for giving their CEO a $51 million bonus after not properly compensating the victims of the fires that it was behind. And now he said they're going to tax solar. We need a Green New Deal. And I agree with the senator from Vermont. We do. And the way, there are other things that we can do. The cost of installing solar is about 40% less in Germany. Germany does not have a lot of sun either, but it definitely is really good at putting solar on a roof, and a lot of households have it there. Unfortunately, not enough to have been independent of Putin, as we have come to find out. But yeah, hopefully this addresses all the different facets of your excellent question. Okay, so I can very quickly, I know for time, I may have to drill down on just a few priority bills, but if you want the link, I will put that in the chat again. And this is a public facing document. Anyone, these are just some of the Sierra Club legislation where the Sierra Club has taken a position. But these were the ones seen as most important. So reining in the fossil fuel industry, that was a win. The bill from Senator Limon unfortunately did get weaker over time as a condition to moving it forward, but it still is a big win. It would address the fossil fuel industry's practices by prohibiting enhanced oil recovery using carbon capture. And then this is the much vaunted setbacks bill, which already is now I think the oil industry was planning for a week to referend this, but I think they just called off that effort. And this would simply require a 3,200-foot setback between oil and gas wells and sensitive receptors like homes, schools, childcare facilities, playground, hospitals, and nursing homes. So congratulations. We have now joined the annals of Alaska and Texas and Colorado passing an oil setback provision, but at least we're there. Talk about the stranglehold big oil has had. There were some other things that did pass. The Sierra Club opposed an extension to the Diablo Canyon power plant, another $1.4 billion giveaway, waiving CEQA the California Energy Quality Act. The solar industry, by the way, almost stopped this from going through because embedded in that bill, some senior, or I should say former senior advisor to the governor, introduced language in there that would have snuck in a solar tax, bypassing the CPUC. And in the 2 days following this, one legislator got 800 calls about opposing this bill because of the solar tax, in addition to all the other reasons why this bill should have been opposed. So they did it was too late to amend the bill because they snuck it in 72 hours before the deadline to pass bills off the floor, and bills can't be amended 72 hours from that deadline. So they had to do a clarification in the legislative record to say this is not going to be a solar tax. It's just going to be imposed on customers that use electricity that are relying on Diablo Canyon. Never, still a bad bill, even without the solar tax in there, but that was a priority of the governor. It was signed. Interestingly enough, one bill that passed through the legislature that the governor had to veto, it would have exempted, it would have basically exempted the solar mandate from applying to homes that are have to be rebuilt after fires, some of which were fires like in places like Paradise, that were actually caused by malfunctioning transmission lines that belong to PG&E. So very ironic. And the governor actually vetoed it and had nice things to say about rooftop solar in his veto message, but I wouldn't read too much into it. Let's see. The 30 by 30 bill that I referenced earlier, that was signed. Again, that's achieving the goal of conserving 30% of California's lands and coastal waters by 2030. Unfortunately, there was a bill to finance sea level rise resiliency that was vetoed by the governor, I think due to cost concerns by the governor. We supported a bill by our very own Senator Skinner, who is one of the best pro-solar members of the legislature. It's going to be really, really hard when she terms out. This would reduce carbon and criteria emissions from California's agencies by requiring criteria to evaluate bidders for commercial rental car service contracts based in part by the number of ZEVs, or zero emission vehicles, in the rental car fleets. He unfortunately vetoed two good transportation bills, one that would have provided for youth transit passes, one that would have aligned transportation programs with climate goals. The governor was middling on our two, I'm putting on my Sierra Club California hat now, our two clean and safe water for all priorities. There was a Rivas bill who might potentially be our next speaker, we shall see, that would ensure environmental justice and water policy. However, he did veto a water ratepayer assistance program bill. He also signed a bill that will reduce PFAS exposure, but unfortunately vetoed another bill that would have addressed pesticide use. And he vetoed a form minimum content bill, but he did sign into law an end to diversion credits for incineration. And then there were a bunch of priority bills. Some of them came agonizingly close to getting the votes they needed, but failed by 1 or 2 votes. Others we opposed strenuously, like this SB 396 bill, utility tree removal without proper oversight, and those were also stopped. So you can see all of these in the link that I posted in the chat.
Hmm.
I will put my email again if you have any other questions about solar. I'll do 2 emails, one for anything solar, one for everything else. And feel free to email me if you have any questions
Oh, yeah.
or want me to join a Zoom on something, because again, it's all related. Well, thank you for being on the front lines of the fight to save solar, save the planet, save Ukraine, and save democracy.
Thank-
Ruby,
Thank you so much.
I think Ruby, did you have
The
a
solar,
final question?
this is a solar program, but since the election's coming up, I thought you might want to give us your thoughts on Prop 30.
Mhm.
I support Prop 30. I understand that there have been, there are legitimate reasons why some oppose Prop 30. There are also some less legitimate, in my opinion, reasons to oppose Prop 30. But I will be the first to say Prop 30 is not perfect. In full disclosure, the Sierra Club actually took a pass. They're neutral on it because there are no guardrails on the fire mitigation language. But like most legislation that is put in front of the legislature or voters, these are all compromise documents. I can't think of if Prop 40 does not pass, I am hard pressed to figure out another way that we can move as quickly as Prop 30 funds and proposes to do towards zero emission vehicles. And I think given the immense amount of carbon emission that come out of the transportation sector, including the use of privately owned vehicles, such as the ones being used by transportation network company drivers, this is a one and done opportunity to clean up the air once and for all, and uplift and prioritize the needs of communities, like communities in West Oakland and Richmond that right now are in asthma zones, that are not breathing good air in large part. I mean, many different reasons why, but car emissions, emissions from the transportation sector in general is one of the biggest ones. So I do support Prop 30 in my individual capacity.
Any final burning issue for anyone? Question? Comment? Igor, thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's been a great
was enlightening.
discussion.
Well, thank you so much.
Everybody,
Yeah,
for your thoughtful questions and great discussion.
yeah, very good.
This has been recorded and will be posted on the League's YouTube channel in not too long a time.
Thank you.